This podcast is featured on the Gun Rights Radio Network, podcasting freedom.
Hello and welcome to episode 31 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. I am Walt White, and I have for you this week what I hope is going to be an episode that's quite a bit shorter than usual. I've had a rather hectic week, and we're coming down to the wire. It's either produce the show as is, or take a pretty heavy gamble and try to record it tomorrow, which is absolute last minute. Kind of cross your fingers and pray that nothing goes wrong, because there is no time to fix anything at that point. So what I'm going to do is just run with what I have. I have two pieces of news. Actually, it's more like one and a half, but we're going to stretch it into two pieces of news. Two pieces of featured content. I have a cigar and drink pairing as usual, and the discussion topic that I should have done probably 2 weeks ago, but I kept pushing off, as far as the New York gun law information. So with all that said, let's kind of get rolling into this little bit of kind of pre-news banter. So, why have things been a little hectic? Well, just a busy week in general, but today, Sunday, the day that I normally record the podcast, I spent a couple of hours running up to Custom Gun Finishes to pick up my Glock 17. I went up with the rest of the shooting team. We picked up the tactical Cheetah. I believe what has been dubbed the Desert Fox, my digital camo Glock 17, which doesn't have a name. I'll leave that up to you if you've got any clever suggestions. But tactical Cheetah it's Cheetah print on the slide of a Glock 17. I posted pictures of it on my blog. The owner, Scott, has posted a couple of pictures around, and the reception is not good. People really don't seem to like the Cheetah look on the slide of a Glock 17. It's not my thing. It's not something that I would want to stand out in public and shoot. However, it is just simply amazing how detailed it is. Seeing this thing in pictures, it looks well done and quality gun finish. However, when you see it in person, you can look up close. It's amazing the level of detail that you get out of this hydrographics process. I mean, when you think of Cheetah print, it's colored hair, and while the slide isn't all fluffy and stuff, you can make out in the print individual small hairs that make up the larger pattern. And I just thought that was amazing. It wasn't like they just took some Duracoat and sprayed a faux pattern. It's like a water transfer kind of a thing, and you get all the detail. It's just amazing. Looking at it up close, it's just amazing the detail that went into that slide. So I was really impressed with it. It may not be your thing, however, it is a quality finish, and it looks great. From a quality standpoint. What has been dubbed, I guess, Desert Fox is Springfield XDM. It's got a digital camo slide and interchangeable backstrap, and I believe it's some sort of tan frame. And it turned out great. The matching the backstrap to the slide, it was just a wonderful touch. It turned out really, really good. There was what seemed to be I don't know whether it was just a really heavy digital camo pattern on the slide, or whether it was just the slide with the serrations and just sort of the way it was cut that made that digital camo pop. But it looks really good. I picked up my gun today, which actually, rather than show you a picture of it and do a little picture-in-picture thing, I can actually just show you the gun, and you can see what's going on. For those of you doing the audio-only thing, I'll just sort of walk you through it. The frame is a really dark sort of OD green. It's kind of shiny in the picture because there is a gloss top coat on top of the Duracoat frame. The slide is made up of a couple of different dark green colors in a digital camo pattern. There is sort of the same olive drab kind of green color, although it's a little bit darker in the frame. There's more of like a World War II sort of green, and then there's some blacks mixed in. So the whole gun is pretty dark, but personally I just think it looks great. I'm really happy with the way it turned out, and I can't wait to break this thing in and start shooting it. The interesting thing with Duracoat is you know, a lot of the things that I've heard about it is that it's a really, really durable finish. And, you know, I'll give it that. I was really impressed. They also coated both of my magazines that came with the gun. And I was test fitting the magazines in my mag pouches, which are they're just Blade Tech double magazine pouches. And well, I shouldn't say surprisingly, but the Duracoat finish on the magazine most certainly makes it thicker. It doesn't look like a really thick finish. However, it is thick enough that it's binding a bit in my mag pouches. And even with the Duracoat dragging inside the mag pouch, pulling it in and out to try to adjust the tension. There's a tension screw on it. I've got it backed out pretty far, but I was messing around with the tension screw, moving the magazine in and out of the mag pouch, and all that binding and grinding, and it doesn't look like the finish was touched at all. I was really expecting to see some scratches, some scuffing, but amazingly it didn't. I ran the gun in and out of the holster a little bit. I had to adjust the tension on that as well, and it, much like the mag pouches, it had to be backed out fairly far. And in those first couple of insertions to get the gun seated in the holster, you really had to push it before it clicked, and I was kind of paranoid. I was expecting to pull that gun out of there and see scuff marks all over the frame, but you know, this stuff is really impressive. It hasn't scuffed, it hasn't scratched, but you know, USPSA shooting will be a really good test for the durability of Duracoat, because throughout this season, the gun will probably come in and out of my holster at least 100 times, probably a few hundred times, between just running a match in general and dry fire practice at home. Magazines will be rammed in and out of mag pouches, dropped on gravel, dropped in mud, dropped on grass, dropped on 2x4 marked areas to make field of fire zones. You know, these things are going to get banged around, beat and dropped, and you know, the gun will have several thousand rounds run through it by the end of the season. So you know, that should give me a really good understanding of just how durable Duracoat really is. So far it's impressive right off the bat, so I'm really looking forward to this season, and you know, seeing how this stuff holds up, and you know, how good my gun looks at the end of the season. So again, we've got Tactical Cheetah, we have what I guess has been dubbed Desert Fox, and then we have my gun, which doesn't have a name. So do me a favor and give it a name. It's just a dark digital camo pattern up top and a dark green frame. It needs a clever name. I don't have a prize to give away to a winner or anything, but I could really use some sort of clever name. I didn't come up with the others, and I'm really bad at that kind of stuff, so I need you to do that for me. So with all that said, I think that about covers everything that I wanted to talk about in the pre-news thing. On my short list of things, I wanted to mention that I picked up a holster. I wanted to mention that I picked up mag pouches, but I've sort of just combined all that stuff into one topic of sorts without doing it on purpose. So I think that about covers us for the pre-news stuff. So sit tight, I'll be right back, and we'll get rolling into the news. Alright, as I mentioned, I have 1.5 or 2 pieces of news. The first one is the full piece of news. This actually comes courtesy of Miguel over at Gun Free Zone. I came across this post. I came across a post from him pointing out this particular news article earlier this week, and I thought it was pretty good and that I would read it. So the original article comes from the Salt Lake Tribune, and it was published on Sunday, March 4th. The article goes on to the article is entitled "Police Identify Home Intruder Killed by Springville Man." Goes on to say, Springville. He trudged through the snow Thursday morning, trying 20 doors before he was able to find one he could break into. Then the intruder made himself at home. He removed his wet clothes and put on some clothes that he found that had been folded in a pile on the sofa. In the kitchen, he found ingredients to make a ham and tortilla wrap. He put the leftovers in the family's refrigerator. It would be his last meal. At 2:45 a.m., the intruder went upstairs and woke the couple who lived in the home, said Springfield Police Lieutenant David Caron. He told them that he had a stolen gun and demanded that they get out of bed. He ordered them to get their wallets and take him to an ATM. So the husband went to his closet. The suspect thought he was going to get his wallet, but instead he grabbed his handgun, Caron said. The husband shot the intruder once in the chest. The man died at the scene. Police identified the dead man as 31-year-old Armando Martinez Jr., whose last known address is in Provo. Caron called the fatal shooting at the duplex near 800 South and 475 East justified self-defense. Someone comes to your bedroom at 3 in the morning and says he has a gun. You believe him, he said. The couple's 3 small children were sleeping in a nearby bedroom and were taken to a relative's house as the husband and wife talked to police. It's a pretty frightening experience, said Caron, who added the couple were traumatized. They held together pretty well for quite a while, but I think emotionally it starts to take its toll. The intruder did not display a gun, and police found only the resident's gun at the scene. However, police say the intruder's behavior is similar to that of a man who stole a gun from another house last week. The intruder in that case went into a house while the residents were at home, threatened them, and took their gun, Caron said. Springville police are working with other agencies to investigate whether the man may have committed other robberies. Neighbors expressed their shock and worry at what happened. Erin Brand, who lives 2 doors down, said the family members are wonderful people. Her children play and go to church with. It's a little scary to think about it because our house has the same layout as their house, and even though it wasn't my home, it makes you feel violated, Brand said. She said she doesn't feel unsafe because the chances of something like that happening there again are remote, and it could happen to anyone. Brand hopes her neighbors, who are staying with relatives, return to the neighborhood. Hope they will come back, he said, or she said. It would be sad if they didn't, but I don't know that they will. But I don't blame them if they don't. She has no doubt, though, that the husband was justified in his actions. He was protecting his family and did the right thing with the information he had at the time, she said. Kat Terry, who moved in across the street in October, echoed those sentiments. You do what you need to do to protect your family if they are in danger, she said. She said the morning's event shook her up. It's really scary, especially when you have kids, she said. While most neighbors describe the neighborhood as fairly quiet, Larry Haynes, who lives down the street, said he has had items stolen from his truck in the past, and he always makes sure his cars and home are locked. I feel bad for the family that they had to go through that, he said. It's a little harsh, but it's better than them getting hurt. Utah court records indicate Martinez has a lengthy criminal history spanning from 1998 to 2011. Martinez was convicted of various charges of theft and shoplifting, attempted aggravated assault, criminal mischief, and assault against a police officer, and drug charges. In Martinez's most recent case, a felony retail theft in 2011, there was a question of his mental competency. He ultimately was deemed competent and found guilty of an amended Class A misdemeanor charge in January. And it looks like this thing goes on for a 3rd page. But I'm not going to read it because it's just credits to the author of the article and their contact information and such. So here's a pretty scary situation. For whatever reason, you leave your doors unlocked. There's this sort of deranged individual going from door to door to door to door. Finally, he comes to your door. It's unlocked. He goes in. I guess it's raining. He's wet. Makes himself at home, changes his clothes, puts on someone else's that were, folded, ready to be put away in the living room, on the sofa. and then proceeds to make himself a sandwich. Talk about, making yourself at home. And then, he goes and wakes up the homeowners and tells them, I have a gun, I want your wallet, you're going to take me to the ATM machine, and you're going to give me cash. So the really interesting thing, or the most important thing about this whole thing, is that the husband was able to keep his wits about him. If he would have kind of freaked out, jumped out of bed, and sprinted to the closet to where his gun was, this thing could have ended much differently. The police say they couldn't find a firearm at the residence aside from the homeowners, so maybe apparently the guy lied about having a gun. However, you really don't know that. If he would have got up and sprinted, this guy probably could have tackled him. Maybe it would have spooked him, he would have ran away, but you've always got to think of the worst. Worst case scenario, he did have a gun and he just blasted the guy for getting up and sprinting towards a self-defense weapon. So it was great that the homeowner was able to keep his wits about him, make this burglar think that, okay, this guy's money's in his closet, he's just going to go get it, and that'll be that. And then he just whips out a gun and say hello to my little friend, blasts him in the chest, and problem done. Or burglar is no longer a concern. He's dead, and that's that. So it turned out good. It's never good that someone had to die over this, but he certainly put himself in that position, and it's no one's fault but his own. I'm glad that the kids didn't wake up and weren't traumatized by this whole thing. Hopefully they were ushered off to a relative's home or a neighbor's home or wherever they went, and they didn't have to see this dead guy or see the pool of blood caused by him and things like that. So I'm really glad everything worked out okay. Homeowners got away unscathed, and there is news item number 1. Alright, well, the half piece of news, sort of, is something that I came across today on PA Gun Blog, which is Shall Not Be Questioned, which is formerly known as Snowflakes in Hell. But this kind of picks up from something that I saw earlier. I don't remember whether it was a couple of weeks ago or if I even talked about it on the podcast. But I came across some video that featured Emily Miller, and she was discussing current firearm situation in DC with what I guess is like city council or something, and she was running down the list of problems that she had with current DC gun law and changes that she would like to see instituted, or things that would ease the burden for potential gun owners in the DC area or in Washington DC. And the video quality wasn't so great, but the content was really good. And Emily went down a rather lengthy list of issues that she had with the current system. Well, it's been a couple of weeks since I saw that video, and just the other day I started seeing tweets from her that were in regards to DC gun law. And I don't know whether she was at another council meeting or she had a discussion with the mayor or how it was working, but she started talking about changes that were going to be instituted to the DC gun law. So the information that I have comes from Shall Not Be Questions. It's entitled Some News from DC. It's a blog post, so it doesn't read like a news article. I'm going to read it anyway. It goes on, this was published on February 29th, and it goes on to say, apparently the DC City Council is considering eliminating the 5-hour training requirement to get a handgun. Emily Miller deserves a lot of credit for this, I believe. I just went upstairs to make sure the skies weren't filled with winged portions. No more ballistics tests either. Don't for a minute think that City Council in DC is doing this out of the kindness of their hearts and their love of the Constitution. They are doing this because they know if Emily Miller goes before Congress, then Congress is going to preempt them from regulating guns at all. They are trying to deal with the threat Emily Miller poses to their ability to regulate firearms. After this blog post was posted, there was an update, and the first one goes on to say no more having to re-register either. You can kind of see what laws they want to preserve, namely their registration scheme, the restrictions on so-called assault weapons, and various other issues. It's kind of amazing that the antis have such a gut reaction to semi-automatic firearms, given that they accept the most popular pistols and rifles are so rarely used in crime as to not be worth worrying about. The second update was no more vision testing. The last update was the bill still has to be approved by the entire City Council and enter a 60-day review by Congress. Law likely to go into effect this summer. So, what I would imagine is is complete credit to Emily Miller for this. Her chronicles in the Washington Times on purchasing a gun and owning a gun in D.C. seem to have made genuine changes to D.C. law. So the issues that some of the issues that she raised in that council meeting a few weeks back seem to be being addressed now, and it looks like some of this stuff is being thrown out. It's still going to be difficult to have a gun in D.C. However, it looks like thanks to Emily Miller, there are a handful of things that just got easier. So, you know, big thanks to Emily Miller for her due diligence in getting this stuff done in the DC area, and you know, I'm really happy to see some changes being made as a result. Well, first up on the featured content front is something that I came across from Miguel over at Gun Free Zone, and actually he called me out on something I said a couple of weeks ago. And he brought this post to my attention, sort of to give me his opinion on the subject that I mentioned. A couple of weeks ago during, I don't remember what I was talking about, but in some news article or featured content kind of a thing, I conceded that there were certain elements of competitive shooting, be it IDPA or USPSA or Steel, whatever, that resulted in you know, poor tactical performance or were detrimental to survival in a survival scenario kind of a thing, or a gunfight. And he kind of called me out on it and just made his opinion known that he thought it was an absolute crock. And you know, that I didn't get upset about it. I'm still not upset about it. And you know, saying that he called me out on it is probably exaggerating the whole thing. He just sent me a message on Twitter and said, I don't believe, or a message on Facebook saying that, he didn't believe that was the case. And here's a post that he wrote back in 2010 if I was interested in getting his opinion on it. And I value Miguel's opinion. I really like the stuff that he posts, so I most definitely clicked through and I started reading, and there was a little video from Extra Normal inside the post, and this was something that he came across and then built on in the post. And if you've ever seen these Extra Normal things, they're just two cartoon characters talking to one another. So basically you go to this website and you punch in all the dialogue, and then you click submit, and it generates a video of one cartoon character talking to another cartoon character in these sort of robotic voices. And some of them are kind of funny, some of them are kind of weird. It's generally a big debate between two cartoon characters, and more often than not you realize just how foolish a certain debate sounds when two cartoon characters are going back and forth one another in this robotic voice. So in this particular video, it was sort of like the pitfalls of IDPA and all the rules and why it's no fun and why IPSC is better, and it was just kind of an amusing little video. But he built on the videos because of an argument that tactics in IDPA will get you killed in a gunfight. When I made that concession, the first thing that popped into my mind was USPSA shooting and how I dump partially full magazines on the ground. Typically, if I'm looking at a target array that has 6 or 8 shots in it, so 3 or 4 paper targets, when I move to the next array, I'm dumping the magazine, I'm losing what's ever in it, it's hitting the dirt, and I don't care, and I'm reloading a fresh magazine. In a real life and death situation, it probably is best to retain that magazine so that if it gets prolonged, I know the average gunfight, is like 2 or 3 rounds and within 3 yards, but, worst case scenario, you need everything you've got on you. You don't really want to be dumping extra rounds on the ground. There are arguments to and against it, but when this thought entered my mind, I simply just conceded the point and agreed with the fact that there are some elements of practical shooting that will be a hindrance in a life and death situation, gunfight. So that's kind of why I conceded it. I didn't have an argument against it, and when that thing kind of comes up, or when those types of things come up, I just kind of concede the point and let it go. But in this case, Miguel gave me a link to a pretty lengthy article that he wrote back in February of 2010, and it was really well written, and I like everything he has to say about it. And in the article, he's making mention that using your gun and becoming proficient with it will never hurt you in a gunfight. The purpose of IDPA and USPSA is to be accurate and fast, and in order to be accurate and fast, you need to be proficient with your weapon. So in that sense, you know, this is great for, you know, preparing yourself for, you know, a real life defensive scenario. You know, you learn to be proficient with your weapon, you learn to be fast with your weapon, and you learn to be accurate, because that's the name of the game. You know, you're striving to be the most accurate, fast shooter, you know, on the stage. That's how you win. So, all in all, that's a good thing in the event that you get into a gunfight. You know, he talks about he doesn't understand why you get some people that are willing to bash anything in the shooting sport that gets people together and shooting. So, you know, he doesn't quite understand that, and quite frankly, I don't understand it either. I mean, I don't like bullseye shooting. I have no interest in bullseye shooting, but I'm not going to go bash it and tell everyone that they shouldn't go bullseye shooting because it's stupid or something like that. You know, if you want to go do it and it gets you out, it gets you outdoors or in an indoor range, and it gets a gun in your hand and it gets you active in the shooting sport, man, have at it. Have a blast. Tell me all about it. It's not my thing, but I'll sit and listen. You know, I'm happy to hear, you know, happy gun stories about how you got out and your family got out, and, you know, everyone had a great time, because that's kind of what it's all about. So that element of the article I thought was fantastic too. He talks a little bit about mall ninjas, and, you know, you get these hardcore tactical trainers that bash IDPA and USPSA because they aren't realistic, and, you know, they won't train you for, you know, a real life gunfight kind of a thing. And, you know, I guess I don't know. I've seen some really, really bad stuff on the internet as far as tactical training goes. I mean, I watched one video where the shooter had to balance themselves on a couple of, like, bamboo logs, and these things are moving, and the objective is to shoot while you're off balance on the bamboo logs, while another instructor is swinging a bamboo log at you, and while you've got like 2 people standing downrange beside the target, because you have to focus on hitting that target, and those 2 live people will make you focus more than anything in your life. So, you know, there's just like really weird, crazy stuff going on. You've got people shooting from a seated position, and the instructor rips the chair out from under them, or pushes them over, or like jumps on them while they're shooting. It's just some really weird, crazy, scary stuff, and that's really turned me off to the whole tactical subgenre of shooting. I mean, I would love to take a good quality run instructed class by, you know, someone like Masad Ayub or Suarez or Frontside or Insights, things like that. But, you know, just some of this really crazy, weird stuff you see on the internet kind of turns me off, and, you know, it makes me wonder, for one, for starters, how serious is it with all this weird stuff going on and things being thrown or swung at the shooter, and you know, is it really beneficial when you have all that stuff going on? So there was so this article is really interesting, and it's well worth reading. I've been talking for far too long, and I'm probably butchering this thing, but because of those remarks that I made, Miguel, you know, pointed out this article that they wrote, and I think it's well worth reading. The video is mildly amusing. If you're into IDPA or competitive shooting at all, you'll want to watch it. If not, skip right over that and just read the rest of the article. I think it's really well done, and well worth your time. Well, for the second and final piece of featured content, I have a video that I came across on Weerd World. Earlier this week, I was just browsing my RSS feed, and Weerd from Weerd World posted this video on silencers, on suppressors. It was entitled Silencer 102, and basically there was this video where it seems as though there's like an NFA dealer or a Class 3 dealer, and he's discussing silencers, and he's using suppressors on pistols and carbines, and he's alternating the magazines. So you have subsonic rounds, so many, and then you have supersonic rounds, and the objective here is to let you hear exactly what's going on. So he breaks out the carbine, he takes 5 shots with a subsonic round, and it sounds pretty quiet, you know, not quite like in the movies where it's just kind of like pff, pff. But, you know, you get a fairly loud crack, and the gun goes off. And then after he gets done the 5 rounds in the carbine, he immediately start shooting the next 5 rounds, which are supersonic and which are way, way louder. I mean, there is just an incredible difference in sound from subsonic to supersonic. And the guy bounces back and forth. I don't remember how many rounds were in the magazine for the carbine, but there were quite a few, and he was going back and forth, one to the other, one to the other. And it was just amazing to hear the sound difference. Then he loaded up a magazine for a pistol, and he ran, I think it was like 3 subsonic rounds and 3 supersonic rounds, and through the pistol it was the same thing. The subsonic were pretty quiet, and the supersonic were, you get that loud crack. So it was a pretty interesting video. One of the things that really caught my attention was the shooter in the video talks about the way the suppressor works. You wind up with a lot more back pressure. And he said, so you get a lot of unburnt powder and stuff blowing back towards your face. So he's saying, always, always, always make sure you wear safety glasses. I mean, it's even more important when using a suppressor than not, because you get so much more crap blowing back in your face. Now, it kind of piqued my interest, because as I'm watching this video, it looks like there's a whole lot of muzzle rise. And I don't know whether it's just because the guy's wearing gloves and he's shooting in the cold, and you know, he just doesn't have a He-Man grip on the gun because of the gloves, but there appears to be a lot of muzzle rise in the pistol, and I wondered, is that extra back pressure causing the gun to rise? And I made a comment on Weird's post, and he mentioned that, you know, typically the guns feel more controlled because you get that big can on the end of the gun that adds extra weight, so it doesn't feel any more violent. It just, you get more blowback. So I thought that was kind of interesting, hearing not only the sound difference between subsonic and supersonic, but seeing the muzzle rise. It really made me curious, you know, does the gun have more recoil as a result of those gases being slowed down through that suppressor, that can? So because I've never shot any suppressed weapon, it sort of, you know, it made me stop and say, wow, you know, I didn't realize that all that stuff went on with a suppressor. So it was a really interesting video, well worth watching. It was pretty short. I don't know how long, 5, 6, maybe 7 minutes long. Really interesting stuff if you're into suppressors, or you just want to see the sound difference from subsonic to supersonic ammunition. Well, it is time for one of my favorite parts of the podcast, and that is the cigar and drink pairing. Much like in a lot of past episodes, I'm doing coffee again, and I'm drinking Dunkin' Donuts coffee. My wife was out grocery shopping shortly before I started recording the podcast, and she brought me back a cup of coffee. She stopped at Dunkin' Donuts to pick up more K-Cups for the Keurig, and she was kind enough to grab me a cup of black coffee, just like I like it, and just really enjoying it. For some reason, when you get the coffee direct from Dunkin' Donuts instead of the K-Cups, it tastes a little richer and bolder, and I actually think it's better direct from Dunkin' Donuts instead of in the little K-Cups, but you know, I enjoy the K-Cups a whole lot too. So it's kind of a win-win, regardless of whether I get K-Cups or actual Dunkin' Donuts coffee. It's really good stuff. So I'm drinking a cup of Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and I'm pairing it with an EP Carrillo New Wave Short Run 2012. Now, I don't know a whole lot about these cigars. I really didn't do much research, and what I do know is these cigars are fairly new. Not all that long ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I got a 3-pack of cigars from Ernie, which is Ernesto Perez Carrillo's son, who is a very big part of the business. And Ernie sent me a 3-pack. He sent me the Exquisitos, the Invictus, and the Reinados, which I'm smoking now. They are 4 7/8 by 50, a 5 7/8 by 52, and this monster mammoth thing is a 6 1/4 by 60. On Ask the Cigar Guys, which is Buckhead Cigar's website, the 5-packs run anywhere from $33.95 to $43.95, and box prices of 24 run $137.95 to $185.95. The cigar is a short run, and by that it means that it's limited number, you know, just limited production kind of a thing, and it's an amped up version of the New Wave. It seems a bit bolder. I think I remember something about they're using a binder from another cigar in this one, and it really amps up the power, and it really does do that. I always have thought that the New Wave was a very rich and extremely flavorful Connecticut. You know, very suitable for early on smoking. You know, you can easily make this thing a right after breakfast cigar without it being overly powerful. Or not this thing, the standard New Wave. And because of how flavorful it was, you could also get away with smoking it in the evening. I just thought it was a very good, well-rounded cigar, and I think this is a well-rounded, just very good cigar with amped up power and flavor. You know, it's got a nice woody component. It's nice and creamy. It's easy on the palate. It's nice and clean. You know, after you get done smoking it, you don't feel all worn out with a furry tongue and just kind of ready to lay down. It's just a nice, smooth, creamy, good quality cigar that smokes just as good in the morning as it does late in the evening. And I'm just very impressed with these. Unfortunately, EP Carrillo seems to have a little bit of trouble in the 6x60 market. You know, I've run into more problems with the cigars with the 6x60 than anything else that he makes. I don't know whether you were paying attention during the video when I was, you know, early on in the podcast, but the cigar looked hideous. I had the wrapper tearing and pulling away. It was just burning really poorly, and I was just really hating it at that point. It was just burning just really, really bad. But I've gotten past that bad spot, and it seems to be smoking really well now. So it wasn't off to a really good start, but it's doing great now. Lots of dense smoke, just smoking really well. All in all, good, solid cigar, and I'm looking forward to smoking more. If you're interested in trying the EP Carrillo New Wave Short Run 2012, I would suggest getting in touch with my preferred retailer, which is Buckhead Cigar in Atlanta, Georgia. You can pick up the phone and give them a call at 404-844-0400. The website where pricing is listed is askthecigarguys.com. Mike is also on Twitter as Buckhead Cigar, and he is on Facebook and Google Plus as Buckhead Cigar as well. So give Mike a ring, find out, you know, tell him how many you want, and he'll ship them off, and you know, you'll have your EP Carrillo New Wave short runs. So again, support my preferred retailer, a fellow cigar guy and a fellow gun guy in Buckhead Cigar. Well, for the discussion topic this episode, I want to talk about the permit system in New York State. Now, when it comes to gun law, I'm pretty ignorant on most states' gun laws outside of Pennsylvania. I don't do a whole lot of traveling. Generally, when I travel, it's to the bordering states of Pennsylvania, and many of which do not have reciprocity with Pennsylvania. So I can't carry a gun there, and because I can't carry a gun in a lot of these places, I'm just not well versed in the law. I don't need to be, because I can't carry there anyway, and I don't have an out-of-state permit or an out-of-state license through like Florida or Utah, which would broaden my carryability, if that's even a word. But it all kind of started back in July. I was shooting my very first USPSA match, and I got to talking to a guy there named Ryan, and Ryan had lent me a magazine pouch because I only had one, and we got to talking quite a bit throughout the match. And he was telling me that he was shooting a CZ at the match, and he was looking to upgrade to possibly a Smith & Wesson M&P Pro. And he started telling me about the system in New Jersey where he lives and how much of a hassle it was. And until then, I knew that New Jersey gun laws were really stringent and just a serious pain, but I had no idea how involved they were. And he was telling me that, you know, he had to go shopping for the gun, and he couldn't buy it. So he had to go shopping ahead of time so that he could determine what he needed, and then he could apply for a permit. The reason why he shopped before he got the permit was because there was a time limit on how soon he used the permit. So if he applies for the permit, he gets, you know, he's granted a permit to purchase a weapon. He's got to either be really quick in determining what he wants, or he already has to know what he wants to buy, because if the permit expires, you have the choice of either applying for an extension which may or may not go through. If it doesn't, you lose the permit and you have to start the whole process all over again. So, it takes a couple of weeks to apply for the permit. It takes, time to get the permit itself. The permit is only good for so long, and then you have, it's just a really involved process. And up until this point, I thought New Jersey was the only state that was really this much of a hassle to purchase a gun. That was up until I started talking to Aaron via email, who's a listener to the podcast, and he started telling me a little bit about New York gun law, and we started exchanging emails, and he sent me an essay of sorts on New York State's permit system. And I'm just going to go ahead and read the entire thing for you. I'm just going to kind of cheat and just read it outright. So again, this comes from Aaron, and it's entitled Trials and Tribulations of the New York State Gun Law. So, obtaining a pistol permit in New York State. I did a bit of research on the high road to find out how many states require a permit of some kind to purchase or own a handgun. It seems like only about 10 do, and none of them require as much as New York State does to simply own one. It starts with obtaining a packet of forms from your county's office building. They consist of a lengthy application, character reference sheets, and a piece of paper that's a bit like cardstock. The application fee for the permit itself is $125, and the packet of forms costs $10. When you turn all of this in, make sure you bring a receipt, because you can't turn in your completed forms without proof of having purchased them. If you lose the receipt, they simply charge you an additional $10. I found the main application form daunting. They're collecting a lot of information about you, and I handwrite slowly and not especially neatly. I decided to use a pistol permit service, which for a package price has the required NRA safety course, as well as an electronic version of the main application. I paid about $250 for this. What they don't have are the 4 people you can use as character references. Each person has to fill out about 10 questions about you and get the form notarized. They also have to fill out one of the lines on the piece of cardstock. Since this piece of cardstock becomes more valuable to you with each signature you accrue, it's best to visit each reference serially and have them fill out both the questionnaire and sign the card, so you don't end up losing it. This is easily the most cumbersome part of the process. Your references have to be county residents you've known for at least a year and not relatives, even distant ones. They have to have a clean record themselves and can't be active duty police in any New York jurisdiction. If the people in your life are anti-gun, you're sunk. If you want to keep the fact that you have a handgun private, even in your social circle, you're done. If you just aren't an especially social person, you can't get this done. If you've recently moved from another state and haven't made 4 new friends in a year, you can't complete this process. I feel really bad for anyone that's moved here from another state to escape from an abusive spouse. Being stalked or any other danger to your life does nothing to accelerate, exempt, or waive you from any part of this application. You also have to buy the gun early on, and both you and the seller are breaking the law if you handle it in New York State before you are granted the permit, although I've never heard of this being actually enforced. So your options are limited to simply trusting that you'll like the gun, handling it out of state, or you and the gun dealer breaking the law by letting you handle it and fire it. The bizarre part of the law is that youths between 14 and 20 don't need a permit to handle and fire a handgun at a range if they are under supervision of a permit holder. Once you're 21 or older, you're in violation. New York State wants handgun registration. Since each handgun is listed on your permit, complete with make, model, and serial number, the first one has to be bought ahead of time so you can become your starter gun. Once you've bought the gun and gathered all of this tedious paperwork, you make an appointment with the pistol permit department to have it reviewed for completeness and have your fingerprints taken. Another perversity is that their calendar is backlogged by weeks, yet the acquisition of the form starts a countdown clock. You have 90 days to complete them and submit. If more than 90 days pass before your appointment, you have to reapply, fee included. Once you turn everything in, it's just a waiting game. They're supposedly doing an extra thorough background check against both criminal and mental health databases, and perhaps even calling your references, although no one that provided them was ever contacted. Generally, permits are issued 3 to 6 months after the paperwork is handed in. You have to go in and pick up your permit in person, but subsequent amended ones are mailed to you. Amendments are a mini version of the initial application. You buy the handgun first, and it waits with the seller while you submit the necessary form and wait until the new gun is added to your permit. So every time you buy a new handgun, you're sent a new permit. When you get rid of this one, you're sent a new permit. People with dozens of pistols are sent a literal stack of cards every time they make a change. Amendments can take anywhere between 2 weeks to 6 months to arrive. The permit itself is in its default state, allows you to have it at home and take it to the range and back, either concealed about your person or locked up in a case with your ammunition in a different part of the car. This authorizes carry for whatever hours your local range allows access to its facilities. If your occupation involves some danger or armed holdup, or if you're an armed guard, you can get employment carry, which permits carry only during the course of a typical workday for you. If you are a high-profile person or your job/business involves a huge amount of cash and/or negotiables, you can get full carry, which allows 24/7 concealed carry. The interesting thing about the whole graduated carry permit system is that there's no criminal penalty at all for having the gun on you off hours. There probably won't be too many times that a traffic stop or other interactions with the police would escalate them to discovering your concealed but otherwise legally owned gun. And if it does, absent a reason to think you've committed a crime, most police supposedly will simply warn you and let you go. If they pursue the matter, you'll have to appear at a revocation hearing in which you explain the circumstances to a judge and hopefully not get your permit pulled. So there you have it. I may have left a detail or two out of the process, but as you can see, it's very involved, obviously engineered to discourage people from even starting it. I was 37 years old when I applied, and I wish I had started sooner. With a clean record and paperwork in perfect order, people generally aren't denied the basic target permit. I wish my state didn't require all of this, but that's what you have to live with here. While other states have rolled back a lot of restrictions, New Yorkers have to fight to keep the current system the way it is without further encumbrances. The other thing I have to say is that concealed carriers in the state do have a lot of freedom to carry. New York has some of the fewest restrictions on where you can or can't pack heat. So I found this article really, really interesting. I had no idea that New York State gun laws were that stringent, and I absolutely agree with Aaron 100%. When you're facing that kind of financial burden up before you even start the process, it's very difficult to want to get involved. So if you're kind of on the fence about wanting to get a gun, even if you just want to keep it in your home, there's just a laundry list of things that you have to do. Lots of paperwork that has to be signed by multiple people. Things have to be notarized. It is just a giant headache, and I can see where this would deter people. Again, if you're on the fence and you see this huge list of what you have to do, I can most certainly see people getting turned off and just not bothering with it because there are a lot of steps involved. So this kind of opened my eyes to gun law in New York State, and I hope you found this as interesting as I did. Well, it's about time to close out the show, but before I do, I want to thank you for watching or listening to episode 31 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. If you have any interest in sending me an email, you have a comment or question about the show or something you want to see talked about, you can do so in a variety of ways. The easiest thing to do is probably to go over to WaltInPA.com and click the contact button. There's a whole bunch of contact information listed there. My Twitter account, which is @WaltW, Facebook, Google+, and I believe I even link my Walt and PA Facebook page. There's an email submission box. You can type in whatever you want, hit submit, and then it'll send it. If you would rather type up an email or attach an audio file or whatever, you can do so and send that to Walt@WaltInPA.com. I'm also on the Gun Rights Radio Network forum. I have a subsection for Shooting the Breeze where you can discuss the episodes or get in touch with me, whatever your little heart, wants, or, wow, what's that word I was looking for? I'm not starting this thing over. But at any rate, again, thank you for watching or listening to Shooting the Breeze, subscribing, downloading, all that good stuff. And until next time, I will catch you later.
You can hear Gun Rights Radio Network on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, BlackBerry, or Palm phones, on demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it for free today at Stitcher.com or in the app stores. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. Gun Rights Radio Network shows can be found under Sources.